one of the purposes of the book is to show how, you can eat red meat, you can be really aggressive out there. Terra Firma, I probably had one of the more aggressive experiences of capitalism you can get. And actually, it doesn't bring much happiness. It doesn't actually make you very satisfied. So the book is really about saying, what is a journey? 40 years of being a deal maker, 40 years of aggressively trying to win everything. And at the end, there's not much happiness from it. And so I don't think you're wrong to be skeptical. I wouldn't be skeptical about private equity. I'd be skeptical about everything. We've created a society which, us Thatcherite children have created a society which embodies a lot of the things that Thatcher spoke about, but the results are very, very different from what she was intending. And, I had dinner with Thatcher a couple of times, and she really was a very compassionate person. But what we've ended up with is a very uncompassionate world. And I think what's really interesting about it is the Chinese, as the BBC put it a few days ago, have eaten our lunch over the last 20 years. And they've done that by a form of capitalism which is very, very different from the West. So not only have we become very, very selfish and very, very individualistically minded, but we've also actually, on a global basis, have pretty well messed up over the last 20 years. So the book doesn't try to address how we've messed up. That would be another book, another story. But what it has tried to address is how trying to just focus on one criteria, profitability, isn't really the answer to having either a successful long-term business or having a successful life. But I don't believe there's any less morality in private equity than you see in public companies or you see in politics, or frankly, you probably see in journalism as well. I think this is more of a systemic issue for society.
Guy, just very quickly, can I ask you how you're thinking about ESG and whether you think private equity is going to be positioned around climate change in the short term?
Well, it most definitely is. You see a lot of investment going into it directly, which frankly is better than buying offsets. The public companies will do a really good job of selling their story. But what I actually see is that private equity firms are making a bigger difference. And there's a very, very simple reason for that. If you are a public company, you are publicly accountable to your shareholders. You are publicly fighting for your returns. So you have to spend money selling the story. But you don't actually have to have any real accountability for what you achieve. In private equity, it's much, much easier to look at each individual company and to actually measure it. And certainly from our point of view, we're giving up return to achieve social objectives, ESG objectives. And it's a question of how much can we give up. And my view is probably about 10% of profits is a reasonable amount to give up to achieve carbon neutrality.